Yeah, we can see it.
Good. I'm going to go slideshow from the beginning. Okay. So today we're going to cover the ox herding pictures, which is the map of the journey of enlightenment in the Zen practice. Now, the ox herding pictures first appeared in 10th century China, where there are 4 different variations of 5 pictures or 6 pictures, and the one that we have most popular that remain today are the 10 pictures version, which is the best known version authored by Rinzai Zen master, or Lin Qi, they call it in China, Lin Qi Zen master, Koan Shi Yuan, in the 12th century in the Song Dynasty, China. And its most famous artistic rendering is by the artist Shubun in Japan, the 14th century, which is the one that we're going to use today. So what is the Zen map of enlightenment about? The ox herding pictures depicts the path of enlightenment of a Zen practitioner. And the journey into the discovery and understanding, which is, the journey of enlightenment is pretty much the journey into the discovery and understanding of the nature of consciousness. So for anyone out there that don't understand what enlightenment means, it doesn't mean that you are becoming a better, hopefully you become a better person, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It doesn't mean that you're going to have halo on your head and people are going to revere you as some sort of exalted guru being. That's not true at all. So enlightenment in Zen is basically the discovery and understanding of the nature of consciousness. So the boy in the ox herding picture, the ox herder, is the innocence, but the personal self that we experience, a self-identity view. They're kind of separated self from, that's I, different from you, that we experience as a normal human being. The ox in the picture is the nature of consciousness, which is Buddha nature or the awakened nature. And when you fully come to understand and manifest, understand the nature of this consciousness, it's called enlightenment. So it's basically a journey into discovering a part of yourself that is universal, but at the same time, personal. So the journey into enlightenment is pretty simple. We learn to accept things as they are. We learn to accept the unknown and be comfortable with it. We learn to accept the past because it's gone. It only has a trace left in our brain. It's called like a movie, a memory. We learn to let the future be whatever it will be, because the problem is the future that we think is the future is basically a projection, our best guess of what could have been. And more for a lot of us, what could have been, there's a lot of time catastrophizing, the worst thing that could happen, I'm worried about doing this and that. So we give up the resistance to life, and we give up the resistance in the present. We embrace the present and live fully in reality of what I call the experience of pure awareness without the many mental filters and hindrances of the conditioned mind. So I'll quickly go through the 10 ox herding pictures in the Zen stages of the Zen practice. So the first picture is this boy. Okay, he's wandering around in the woods. So this is representative of many of us. I would have to say all of human beings. We're completely lost, but we're constantly seeking. The poem that accompanied this was written at the same time in the Song Dynasty by another Zen master. In the pasture of the world, I endlessly push aside the tall grasses in search of the bowl, following unnamed rivers lost upon interpenetrating paths of distant mountains. My strength failing and my vitality exhausted, I cannot find the bowl. I only hear the locusts chirping through the forest at night. So there's an illusion of feeling strength and vitality, exhausted. Our search for happiness, for I call it gratification, some sort of lasting gratification has, if you have been alive at all, deep down inside, you realize that it's pretty futile. We're going from one reward to the next, only to find out as soon as we receive our rewards or fulfill the goal that we set for ourselves, or whatever sense pleasure that we enjoy, it's very fleeting. So none of it lasts. And the opposite of joy and happiness usually comes hand in hand right after that experience with dissatisfaction. So I only hear the locusts chirping through the forest at night. The locust is actually a sideras, which is insect that would make really sad sounds during the summer in Asia. And this poetry alludes to the fact that our life is pretty sad, actually, because we're pretty lost as to our pursuits for happiness. And as we all know, after living for quite some time, that the pursuit of happiness is actually very futile. So at some point in our life, we have to come to the conclusion that we cannot delude ourselves anymore, that we're just running on a wheel and going through the motion. If you haven't come across that in your midlife, call a midlife crisis. I've come across that a little bit early in our early 20s. So it's called a midlife crisis, where you kind of got 2.5 kids and picket fences and a good career, and suddenly you start asking for questions about meaning in your life. So when we start to learn the satisfaction of life and the fleeting nature of it all, we start to discover the footprints. There's these experiences like momentary shift in awareness that we encounter upon, that gives us a little bit of pause, that there could be something out there that is more than this, more than our limited existence, more than the existence that we know. Along the riverbanks, under the trees, I discover footprints. Even under the fragrant grass, I see his prints. Deep in remote mountains, they are found. These traces can no more be hidden than one's nose looking heavenward. Now, these experiences, Abraham Maslow calls them peak experiences. I had these experiences when I was a kid. One time I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. I was having a siesta, an afternoon nap, underneath a bamboo grove on my grandfather's farm in Vietnam. And I was laying on a hammock, and the breeze is kind of, the day was really hot, but there was a little bit of breeze, and I can hear all the leaves in the bamboo grove, the bamboo leaves just shaking and giving this sound. Shh. And I can hear like thousands of leaves, just chattering away with its sound. And for a moment, I was totally, completely relaxed, just before falling asleep. And I felt a sense of peace and serenity and stillness, and it seems like time just kind of stopped. And in that moment, there was a very difficult to describe experience of serenity and I call it quietude, joy in that it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. And that was one experience I had. Another experience I had was when I was about 17 years old, and I went to visit Alberta with my family, a monk and a couple of monks in temples there. And the monks drove us to the mountains, the foothill of the Rockies, and it was a nighttime, and I was sitting with a young monk. He was year older than me, on a log, just by this river. And I looked up. I looked up, and in the moonlight, I saw this kind of shadow, this huge shadow of the Rocky Mountains under the moonlight. And for a moment, I felt this opening, this vastness that opened up beyond, I call it, measurements. That was purely refreshing. And I remember turning over to the young monk, who's now an abbot of a big temple in Edmonton. I told him, I said, "Did you just notice that?" And he says, "Notice what?" And I could explain to him this experience. So these little experience that's peppered through our lives that can be experienced, and usually it happens in nature. If you have done any sort of sport in nature, I call it camping or surfing or mountain climbing, especially, where you have this, experience of being in the vastness of nature, you would experience these momentary shift in awareness. And these momentary shift in awareness gives us pause and makes us wonder about, there must be more to life than than what we're experiencing day to day in our regular life. So we go searching for more. We go searching for the spirits. We go searching for something beyond our regular life. So when we embark on the Zen practice, that search ends and starts with, and then true spiritual life starts with Kensho. And in the Rinzai Zen tradition, Kensho is when you wake up to the Buddha nature for the first time, which is the expansive, unconditioned awareness. So I hear the song of the nightingale. The sun is warm, the wind is mild, willows are green along the shore, but here no bull can hide. What an artist can draw, that massive head, those majestic horns. So the bull in Asia and in India, it signifies something sacred, because the bull helps people to grow rice. It helps people to give them nourishment to survive. So it's seen as a sacred animal that helps people to be able to live. And so without awareness, without this Buddha nature in all of us, we wouldn't be alive. We wouldn't know how to, we wouldn't be able to experience anything. And yet, we're unable to recognize it in ourselves. We've forgotten it because it's so much in the background. So Kensho is that experience of finally recognizing that part of ourselves that is beyond mind, beyond the regular mind, beyond perception, beyond any sort of mental cognition. So this undiluted, unconditioned awareness that is forever present, always there, pervasive, everywhere, is Buddha nature that is indescribable. Okay. So what happens after you Kensho? Well, that's the true start of the spiritual journey. In Zen, well, Kensho is sort of like when you get your black belt. If anybody might practice martial arts, when you get your black belts, that's when you actually really start to understand martial arts. That's really when you start to really appreciate martial arts, and that's a true start of a martial artist. So catching the bull is establishing the steadiness of practice and equanimity into Buddha nature. It's not enough that we got to catch a glimpse of it once. We have to repeat it. Because our mind is constantly, our Buddha nature is constantly being covered up by all the mental habits, all the filters on top that that causes a distortion of reality that can be perceived by the I call it primordial awareness nature of Buddha nature. I seize him with a terrific struggle. His great will and power are inexhaustible. He charges to the high plateau, far above the cloud mist, or in impenetrable ravine he stands. I have abandoned the whips and ropes. Now, why is it that you come to this experience and you struggle with the bull, which is, you know, your Buddha nature, your inherent primordial nature, yet the picture depicts a struggle, but you have abandoned the whip and the rope. What does that mean? Well, the struggle is not really the struggle. The struggle is to surrender, to let go. So we're so conditioned to hold, to grasp, to cling onto everything, whether it's a concept, whether it's an idea, whether it's a real thing. We've been so conditioned to cling to everything. And so the letting go in order to experience the pure awareness experience of Buddha nature is contrary to everything that we have been experiencing and conditioned as a human being in society. So we're struggling to reclaim, or what I say, to let go of all the defilements, of all the mental habits, of all the I call it the filters of the mind that is covering our true nature out. So finally, when we end the struggle, and eventually at some point you get good at letting go, you go into what is called the Gateless Gate of Zen. The whips and ropes are necessary, else he might stray off down some dusty road. Being well trained, he becomes naturally gentle. The unfettered, he obeys his master. So at this point, the Zen practitioner starts to get the hang of, I call it riding, going with pure awareness, and more grounded in reality, without the filters, the many filters of the mind. So this experience gets repeated more and more often and closer together, often enough that it's no longer a struggle to let go. You just learn to let go, and the muscle gets better. Okay, I would say this part of the practice it eases. So when you sit down to meditate, I just say it's a lot more enjoyable. You don't have to force yourself to sit anymore. You don't have to force yourself to meditate anymore. Sometimes you spontaneously go into meditation at different times of the day, of whatever you're doing. Okay, so this is probably the best depiction of the journey where I find that is probably most enjoyable for most people, is when you experience Wu Wei, which is flowing, experience of flow where time stops and the ultimate reality is revealed at the same time. So in the first phase of the journey, you got, form is emptiness, like this Heart Sutra. And in the second phase of the journey, you got something called emptiness is form. So you're able to combine the two together in this perfect harmony, in the flow of life called Wu Wei. And you notice that the kid is riding the bull without any sort of control. So at this point of the enlightenment journey, it's pretty much irreversible. Okay, there's no going back. There's no informed consent. You're going whether you like it or not. Okay, and mounting the bull slowly, I return homeward. The voice of my flute intones through the evening. Measuring with hand beats, the pulsating harmony. I direct endless rhythms. Whoever hears this melody will join me. So at this point, the practitioner, I call it this phase of the journey as, rather than doing things with effort, you start to be able to do things with ease and flow. So it's the ultimate surrender experience. And a lot of people have difficulty with this phase because they don't surrender. But when you get to this phase, you ultimately surrender to the unknown. And I call it falling into nothing, okay? Free falling. So you never find the ground. You're always free falling. But rather than free falling down, you're actually free falling up. I don't know if that makes sense, okay? Free falling up, because the more you fall, the more enjoyable it is. the more profound it becomes. And so this phase of the journey, it's pretty nice. And when you finally come home, when enlightenment is fully reached, the bowl is gone, it's transcended. There's only one, okay? So you have this experience of oneness, okay? Astride the bowl, I reach home, I am serene. The bowl too can rest. The dawn has come in blissful repose within my thatched dwelling. I have abandoned the whip and the ropes. Now, this is an experience that a lot of people describe, you know, the experience of being home, of oneness, of feeling like everything is I, not the little I, but the big I, and I am everything, and everyone is me. And this experience of enlightenment, it's pretty hard to describe. It can be described in so many different ways, multifaceted. It's like if I can describe it, it's like a job well done. You know, at the end of the day, you've done a good job, and you just like kind of give up a good sigh and go, you just come home. Okay, you know, that feeling that where you're done and everything's done and you've got nothing else to do, and you're just totally relaxed and home and there. I don't know if and all of you have went on vacations after you complete a big project or something like that. That's kind of like the same feeling, but it's a little bit more. Okay. If I can describe what enlightenment is, it's probably the best, you know, thing, most profound thing that will ever happen in your life. But at the same time, it's not that cracked up to be. So it's an ordinary, it's a pretty ordinary experience at the end of the day. But this ordinary experience is quite extraordinary. Okay. So the next three pictures actually describe the essence of enlightenment. The first one being both the bowl and itself transcended. You know, you got the famous emptiness kind of picture that you see a lot associated with Zen. Well, what does that really describe? It describes the substance of enlightenment. Okay, so you've practiced Zen for 30 years. What did you get? you get nothing. And most people who do practice Zen for 30 years will tell you that it's a pretty good nothing. Okay, and you know, the funny thing is you don't really get anything, but you lose a lot of things. Okay, so what did you lose? You lose the worry and the anxiety. You lose the self-doubt. You lose the the constant agitated, bored out state of mind. You lose a lot of you know, the things associated with mental anguish and suffering. You lose having to effort through through things all the time. Okay, so life becomes a, I don't know, some experience of ease. Okay, um, so the substance of enlightenment is nothing. It's the emptiness that we have come to know from the Heart Sutra, right? But what a great nothing it is. And when you get the next part is the appearance of enlightenment, right? Which is returning to the source. Too many steps have been taken returning to the root and the source. Better to have been blind and deaf from the beginning. Dwelling in one's true abode, unconcerned with and without. The river flows tranquility on, and the flowers are red. I have abandoned the whip and ropes. So the appearance of enlightenment is actually quite ordinary. It is an extraordinary ordinariness, okay? I had this experience one time. The first time I experienced it, I was walking across my living room, and I saw the sun shining through onto the carpet. And it suddenly hit me, this realization and this recognition. I didn't do anything special. I was just walking across my living room. It suddenly hit me and dawned to me, this is how I saw life when I was a child. So I called up my teacher and I said, you know, something really peculiar happened today. And he said, what? I says, I described what I experienced, and he started laughing and he says, what do you think enlightenment is? Is the innocence that we've always had with that has always been with us, that it was not covered up by all of this conditioning of, you know, family, society, everything that we have piled on top of. Okay. And so a child sees life with, you know, no filters. A child sees life with newness. Everything is new. Okay, everything is to be discovered. A child has totally innocent and has no mental filters in terms of you know, prejudices or labels to things, or, you know. So we have a saying in Zen, something that a child would know and an 80-year-old man doesn't. And that's the wisdom of it. So the appearance of enlightenment is actually very ordinary. It's alive through the eyes of a child, unfiltered, conditioned by the many demands of society and life. So how do you go through life living like that, with that, I call it, return to the source of innocence? Well, the purpose of enlightenment is with openness. You live life with openness, with vulnerability, with total openness and vulnerability. I call it, you know, the authentic life. To love deeply and act effectively. So in this last picture is open hand and open chest, going back to the market, is the ultimate, I call it, expression of Zen, is the purpose of enlightenment. Barefooted and naked of breast, I mingle with the world, with the people of the world. My clothes are ragged and dust laden. I am ever blissful. I use no magic to extend my life. Now before me, dead trees become alive. I have abandoned the whips and ropes. So in this picture is actually a historically real person. He's probably the Asian version of Santa Claus. So he's a bad guy, right? So he lived sometime in the Song Dynasty. He was kind of like a beggar monk, and he had always carry a big bag behind his back with a bunch of goodies that he would visit the town market and play with the children and open the bags and take the goodies out and give the kids. So he would be in the market and playing with the kids and talking to people, and it's just a jolly, happy fellow who it's pretty ordinary. Okay, it doesn't come across as anything special. And one day, the Zen master, who was the king's teacher, they call it the king's teacher. There's actually an official designation back then. So he told the king, he says, the most enlightened man in all of China has just died. And the king says, who? And that's the king's teacher, the Zen master, said, that guy, the bad guy, who's in the market. And the king says, how could he be the most enlightened man in China? And the Zen teacher says, because enlightenment is very ordinary. Okay. Not unless you spend sufficient time with the person and you know what you're looking for. It doesn't come across as anything special. So this person is capable of living the authentic life with openness, capable of unconditional love, and capable of acting effectively in whatever that person embarks upon, that he comes across. So that's the purpose of enlightenment. So if you come across someone who profess to have enlightenment and they're portraying anything but being ordinary, you have to really question it. Because in the Zen practice, enlightenment is very ordinary. Okay? It is living the authentic life in all its ordinariness. Okay, so I'm going to open up for questions. If anyone has any questions. Okay, so the illustrations are from the woodblock artist in Kyoto. The poems by 12th century Chinese master Huang Yan. And you can find this ox herding pictures in the book called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. Okay, so any questions? Well, it doesn't have to relate to today's class. You can ask any questions related to the part practice, last class.
Maybe you want to answer that one question we missed last class about whether you recommend a guided meditation to help with the Zen practice or Zen meditation.
Zen meditation practice is unguided. But I'm finding that when you do the counting practice, you're already guiding your mind to do a particular thing. So it's not exactly entirely unguided unless you go into shikantaza, which is entirely an unguided sit. If you have difficulty getting into meditation, guided meditation would be able to help for a little bit. But I would say remove it after a while because you want to be off those crutches, right? To observe your mind and be able to spontaneously go into meditation. So if you want to use those apps, I know there's a lot of meditation apps out there that gives guided meditation when you first start to sit, that's fine. But eventually you're going to have to discard that because no, you don't need to have training wheels on all the time. Okay. One of the ways that I find that I go into the sitting the most easiest is when I take those first 10 deep breaths, to help me settle. So when you take those 10 deep breaths, to take all the breath all the way down to your diaphragm, fills out your entire diaphragm, and then breathe out and extend the breathing out for as long as you can until you exhale absolutely everything in your lungs. If you do that the first 10 breaths after you sit down, you'll find that your body just kind of settles right away. you don't really need the guided meditation. Okay.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, sorry. Acceptance, war, genocide, injustice.